STOKE is our latest product, which happened early this year. In fact, it was one of the fastest developed products we've ever had. So we started in the beginning of January, around January 7th, and we released in the last day of April. So that was a really, really fast turnaround. And I'm going to show some things and talk about certain technologies that in the base of STOKE. But let's see what it is. We call it an easy-to-use particle simulator. But actually, the title of STOKE is Particle Reflow Tools. And over the years, back in the days of frantic films and prime focus, especially during the frantic films days when we were using flood, we actually had already reflowing tools, which were something similar to what film effects with film effects follow and particle flow provide nowadays, but that was even earlier. We had a standalone application that would take a velocity field from a fluid simulation and direct many millions of particles to be rendered with Kritator. That was around 2005, 2006 for Superman Returns. And last year we worked on a project called Ember, which is still not finished and we'll be continuing this year with it. But we got some ideas from that project, and STOKE is a direct result of that development. But the big difference is that we wanted it to be very fast and very simple to use. That means anybody should be able to use it as easily as you use Frost, for example. You click, and things happen without having to connect complex nodes and think too much and so on. And it produces really high volume particle clouds, which is what Kritator typically likes to render. So STOKE MX is related to both Ember and to Kritator and fits in our whole palette of tools that we sell for particle work inside of 3ds Max. We tried to make it work with pretty much any type of source that you might want to use. Typically, you would use geometry, surfaces, volumes, vertices, edges, using soft selections on top of that. All the possible particle sources, including all the Kritator particle objects, and film effects simulations. The source channel is respected, so I can directly just pick a film effects and emit where film effects would normally emit. And we also try to support all possible velocity field sources, which includes film effects, Ember, which someday will be a finished product and will give you even more power to work inside of STOKE. Particle flow particles, thinking particles, PRT loaders, and pretty much all the Kritator PRT objects can be turned into velocity fields by just adding a velocity channel to them, for example using Magma, and also the 3ds Max legacy particles, which nobody has used for years, but suddenly they become very useful. And of course the 3ds Max force space warps, which normally used to accelerate particles, but we're using them slightly differently. And even though these possible sources for distribution and for velocity fields doesn't cover everything that you might want to use, for example, splines are not directly covered here, you'll see that indirectly you can actually use them. Again, thanks to the integration between STOKE and Kritator. In addition, it's important to mention that STOKE is actually, like many of our other products, like Kritator, for example, is a hybrid C++ plugin with a MaxScript user interface on top. It exposes a global interface, a reflow global MaxScript interface, and a base object that we use to actually represent the object in the scene. But actually, all the heavy work is being done just in that interface and in that plugin under the hood, and the complete UI that you're going to see is actually scripted on top, and you can go and start from scratch and write your own completely different STOKE user interface, or even new tools that simulate differently. All the simulation steps, including the birth of particles, the advection of particles, and all the logic is mostly implemented in MaxScript, and we have implemented one way to do things, and even during the development we changed how it worked, or the order of certain operations, or whether you can reuse the same source multiple times in different ways and so on, but just modifying the script. And we even wrote additional tools, for example, for partitioning, by just using MaxScript and using the functions and features that were exposed by the stock interface. So it's even more flexible than it appears from first look. You can use it as it is, but if you're a technical artist or a technical director and you want something completely different from it, it's still possible to actually write your own tools around it. As mentioned previously, STOKE MX works great with other Thinkbox products. In addition to Krakatoa, all the rendering capabilities of Krakatoa and the objects that come with, like all the PRT objects and modifiers that come with Krakatoa, STOKE is a valid Krakatoa object, pretty much. That means that it accepts magma modifiers, particle delete modifiers, and it can be directly rendered by Krakatoa, obviously. But you can also mesh it with Frost, and Frost normally acts a particle source. In this case, STOKE behaves like any of the other PRT objects from Krakatoa, so it uses the same channel system and the same streams. That means you need the latest version of Frost. We updated it recently to both support Max 2014 and to support STOKE as a valid source. So I can measure those particles, and as I mentioned already, all the modifiers from Krakatoa that's typically used on other PRT objects work on STOKE. So you can think of STOKE as yet another special kind of PRT object.